Hello, everybody. Welcome to Region Weather Live. I'm meteorologist Brad Warner. And look at that board, guys. Look at all the things that are going on right now across the United States due to this large system that is now pulling out of the Rockies. We've got all kinds of watches and warnings and advisories and tornado watches going on, all because of this big system that's pulling out and causing all kinds of havoc and bringing rain and snow to parts of our area. And in fact, if we zoom on in, we can see we've got all kinds of advisories, as I said before, and I'll kind of wrap these up a little more later on in the broadcast, but winter weather advisories, winter storm watches, winter storm warnings. If I pull back just a little bit, you can see the rain is already beginning to move into our area across southern parts of South Dakota, parts of Minnesota, and then also some areas moving just into Duluth at this moment as well. So this very dynamic system already getting going across our region. And before I get into the forecast, I want to remind everybody to make sure you hit that like button down below. That way that helps the YouTube algorithm kind of pick up my channel and get the word out to people who are looking for it across the Dakotas and Minnesota as this storm begins to move and develop across our region. So first of all, here we are looking at midnight time frame. And as you already saw, some rain already moving into parts of South Dakota and Minnesota. We're also expecting some light snow across western parts of North Dakota as well eventually as we get a little bit later on into the night. And in fact, most areas will see some kind of precipitation out of this. Most areas will not see a whole lot of snow accumulation. Really, the focus is going to be down into this region, as I'll show you as we go along. Now, as we get more so into Tuesday morning, that rain picks up. We get into about 6 to 7 a.m. on Tuesday. And that's where we're going to start to see maybe some snow begin to develop from south central parts of South Dakota on up into the triple point of the Dakotas and Minnesota, and then perhaps on up into just north of Duluth, getting into that Grand Rapids area. Some of it's going to be light to possibly moderate at times. The other thing to kind of keep an eye on as we take a look at this is that delineation, that line between the rain and the snow could potentially see some freezing rain or some sleet along with that as well. So even though some areas might not pick up a ton of snow, we've got that potential at least to also get some icy conditions on the ground. So hazardous travel conditions still possible within that region. Now, I want to kind of point out something here. I had somebody mention down in Sioux Falls about how it's funny that they're not going to really get a whole lot out of this. And this is why. Watch this, guys. We've got the snow down and through here, and eventually it does kind of meander southeastward, but it kind of fades away and then begins to pick up again once it moves more so into Minnesota. So here we are. Like I said, this is around 7 a.m., 9 a.m., and around the noon time frame. Again, that snow kind of continuing to slip to the south and east. Rain continues across southeast, far southeast South Dakota, southern parts of Minnesota. And in fact, as we get a little more into the afternoon hours, around 3 to 4 o'clock, maybe even later, we got some heavier showers and perhaps even some thunderstorms could make its way into the area going in late Tuesday, perhaps early parts of Tuesday evening. So some of you might hear a few rumbles of thunder, may perhaps even see just a little tiny bit of hail with that as well, because as these updrafts get into that colder part of the atmosphere, and right now that colder part of the atmosphere isn't that high up in above the ground because we still are in very early March. So it won't take much for some of that rain to freeze and fall out of the sky. So again, if we do see a thunderstorm or two, don't be surprised either if you get a little bit of tiny hail across some of this going into a late Tuesday. Now, as we get into about 6 to 7 p.m., that moisture coming out of the Gulf really begins to make its way into the area, runs into this cold air coming in out of the north. So some pretty good rains down here in southeastern parts of Minnesota. Well needed rain, some much needed moisture. But then we're also going to be running into the cold air, creating that snow across central parts of Minnesota. Perhaps getting a little burstier across Sioux Falls, maybe, but ultimately it doesn't really get taking off until a little bit later as we get into here's 9 o'clock and here's midnight. And here's what I mean. That snow really begins to take hold across southeastern parts of Minnesota more so and continues through the overnight hours. And also, as we go into the overnight hours, we see these isobars, these black lines really begin to tighten through the overnight hours. So that means some strong winds associated with it as well. So for those of you that are picking up some snow through the overnight hours, we're looking at the potential for seeing some reduced visibility, perhaps even some localized blizzard type conditions across far southern portions of Minnesota as we go into the very early morning hours of Wednesday. Now, this is right around 6 to 7 a.m. We can see the back edge of that snow already begin to taper off here as we get into central parts of Minnesota. We continue to snow across the southeastern parts at this point. And then as we get to about 9 to 10 a.m., again, that back edge moves just a little bit further to the southeast, lightens up down in the far southeastern parts of Minnesota. And ultimately, by the time we get to around noon on Wednesday, most of that snow is out of our region. And this is kind of what I've come up with for our snowfall forecast. Very wonky, for a lack of a better term, out of this. But ultimately, as I said, most areas should see at least a little bit of snow out of this. Maybe the only exception here is going to be the far northern portions, northeast, North Dakota, northwest Minnesota, who probably won't see anything out of this. But otherwise, everybody in this light blue area will pick up around trace to 2 inches. Now, this one's a little difficult as we could see little pockets here and there once in a while that could pick up a little more snow. So that's kind of where we've got the trace to maybe 2-inch mark. But at the moment, it's kind of difficult to say exactly where. So that's kind of where we've got that trace to 2-inch mark. Now, you remember in the forecast, we kind of had that early line that kind of developed up and through this region. And so in some of these areas where we've got a little bit of the darker blue areas where we're looking at 1 to 3 inches perhaps, and maybe we could connect some of this based on perhaps what the model I just showed you. But I think for now, we're going to keep the light blue in there for trace to 2 and some pockets of 1 to 3 inches along with that. And then maybe a little bit darker area here across far south central parts of South Dakota where we could pick up maybe upwards of 2 to 5 inches. Now, of course, as we get further to the south and east, here's kind of where the haymaker becomes, so to speak, once again, 2 to 4 inches, kind of St. Cloud and southward, perhaps just kind of touching Mankato. And then we've got the purple of 4 to 7 inches right in through here. And then a pocket of 5 to 8 inches getting close to that Rochester area, but ultimately closer to Red Wing and Wabasha, just south of kind of that heavier suburban area of the Twin Cities. And then, of course, in the higher elevations of the Black Hills, we've got a pocket of 4 to 8 inches. Now, in this area down in the far southeastern parts of Minnesota, should some of that snow develop a little bit sooner, that cold air sagging a little quicker, perhaps more moisture gets pulled into this pocket here, we've got the potential at least of seeing a higher snowfall total than what's currently forecasted. So for those of you down in the far southeastern parts of Minnesota, keep that in mind, where you could pick up more so in the range of perhaps 3 to 6 inches by the time it is all over. Now, unfortunately, we've got some strong winds that are also going to be associated with this storm. So here we are looking at the possible wind gusts at noon on Tuesday. And that's kind of when that one band kind of begins to develop across parts of South Dakota. And we're already looking at 40 to perhaps 50 mile per hour wind gusts. So possibility of seeing some reduced visibilities already going into Tuesday afternoon across parts of South Dakota. Now, as we get into the overnight hours of Tuesday night, this is 6 o'clock. This is closer to midnight. And of course, by this time, some of that snow is starting to get or push more into Minnesota, and we're starting to see those wind gusts develop further eastward of 40 to 50 mile per hour as well. So as we go through the overnight hours and into early Wednesday morning, This is around 6 to 7 a.m. We're looking at 40 to 50 to, guys, wouldn't be completely surprised if some of these areas down and through here also see a 60-mile-per-hour wind gust. Wouldn't completely rule that out at the moment. So you're expecting all that snow down here. We've got winds gusting over 40 to 50 miles per hour. This is around noon time frame. We've already got that snow laid across southern portions of Minnesota. And this is around 6. And finally, by midnight, Wednesday night, early Thursday morning, those winds die down. So areas outside the metro where these strong winds are going to be developing, we're going to be looking at localized blizzard conditions beginning early Wednesday morning and kind of continuing throughout most of the day. So boy, keep that in mind if you're traveling across far southern parts of Minnesota, as travel conditions will likely become very treacherous. And then the other area to keep an eye on is going to be the southern parts of south central parts of South Dakota, because we've kind of got some higher snowfall totals here as well. We got the gusty winds that are going to be kicking up beginning Tuesday already. So looking at Tuesday afternoon, don't be surprised if you see some reduced visibilities in through this region as well. So keep that in mind if you're traveling across I-90 across southern parts of South Dakota. And then the other troublesome thing to think about is going to be that icing potential. So a trace to perhaps 0.03 of an inch of freezing rain or sleet across this area. Again, still kind of a wide area that I've got going on here. And not all these areas are going to be treacherous travel. But if you're planning on traveling across any part of this area, just kind of keep that in mind, that there is that potential for seeing some freezing rain or some sleet that will make driving hazardous. And we're mainly looking at Tuesday afternoon into Tuesday evening with that possible freezing precipitation taking place. All right, and finally, our watches and our warnings here. We've got a winter storm watch, and this is valid until Wednesday around 3 p.m. And they're saying blizzard conditions possible, total snow accumulations between 3 to 6 inches. This is out of the National Weather Service. Winds could gust as high as 55 miles per hour. Now, the winter weather advisory here across much of eastern South Dakota, that goes until Wednesday morning until 3 a.m. And generally speaking, they're saying mixed precipitation expected, total snow accumulations between 1 and 3 inches with winds gusting as high as 55 miles per hour. Plan on slippery road conditions. The hazardous conditions could impact the Tuesday morning commute already, as well as the evening commute. Strong winds could cause tree damage in near whiteout conditions at times. And then finally, the winter storm warning down in south central parts of South Dakota. And that's because, again, due to that kind of higher accumulating snow expected down there. And that's valid until 11 p.m. on Tuesday. Snow and blowing snow expected. Total snow accumulations between 2 to 6 inches with wind gusting as high as 65 miles per hour, they are saying out of the Weather Service. Visibilities may drop below a quarter mile due to falling snow and blowing snow. Plan on slippery road conditions. Hazardous condition could impact the Tuesday morning and evening commutes. Very strong winds could cause extensive tree damage. Once again, that coming out of the National Weather Service, and that one comes out of Rapid City. So the storm system, relatively speaking, is impacting a smaller area of our viewing region. But the area that it is impacting, it's quite dynamic. All sorts of things going on between thunderstorms and freezing rain and snow and blizzard conditions. So be on the lookout, especially as we get into Tuesday afternoon, going through Tuesday night and on into Wednesday. Some pretty bad conditions probably traveling across southern parts of Minnesota. So if you're traveling that way, you might want to plan ahead and maybe cancel or just modify those plans for a different date. Wow, yeah, quite a bit going on there. So if you haven't done so already, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below, as well as the button right beside it. That way you'll be notified when I've uploaded a video just like this. We'll keep you informed as we go into the spring and we get these snowstorms that pop up that like to kind of run through our area and dump all kinds of snow. And then as we get a little bit later into the season, we're going to be talking about severe weather as well. So you're going to want to be up to date on that as well. So make sure you hit the subscribe button. All right, everybody, for Region Weather Live, I'm meteorologist Brad Warner. Everybody, have a good day.